And everyone should be able to see my screen. And just a quick overview. Just as always, you know that everyone will be on mute. We will have we'll have everyone on mute, but if I'll be monitoring the questions and the chat feature for GoToWebinar. So if you have questions as we're presenting, please just go ahead and type them in. Just a quick introduction to CPS, who we are, what we do. You know, you're attending our monthly WEBtips session. You know, CPS has about 6 different pillars that we're focused on, from Winshuttle for SAP to Winshuttle workflow, some lean dashboards. So we have a process BI that we have a little slide on, and lean imaging. So we have some really cool case studies coming out on our lean imaging side, that how we've automated pain invoices. From our lean dashboard perspective, you can see a quick snapshot or a snippet of that. For the dashboards, we have this already bundled, ready to go. It actually presents your Winshuttle data in a nice dashboard that you can actually have more visibility into your process. Winshuttle has some dashboards out of the box, but we've actually partnered with a company called Click that we've actually bundled this all together, and we have these really nice dashboards that you can see. And again, they're already bundled, ready to go. You don't have to build your own reports. You don't have to do all the technical stuff. It's all set up and ready to go. So if you're interested in that, just go ahead and email sales@clearprocesssolutions.com. To our next slide here. We do. Some of you are Solution Care customers, and some of the benefits you've seen with Solution Care, being able to open up tickets on a lot of different problems, whether it's around best practices on Winshuttle, some architectural questions on how-tos, even designing some forms and workflows, to even more technical issues around performance and server and SQL environments. So if you're not a Solution Care customer, you can actually email solutioncare@clearprocesssolutions.com, and that will get you 5 free hours just for you to try it out. So if you're a Winshuttle customer and you have the desktop products or the form and workflow products, then feel free to email Solution Care. All right, so just a quick introduction to WEBtips. If this is your first time here, welcome. We use our WEBtips session here at CPS to kind of express or show our experience in the tool, what we've done across the market, some tips and tricks on the Winshuttle products. So we have a lot of projects going on at any given point in time, and we're constantly learning new things and new tips and tricks that we'd like to share with the market. So, you know, we present this once a month. On the even number of the months, we do our forms and workflow, which is what you're here for, and on the odd number of the months, we do the desktop product. So this month, we're going to focus on our form and workflow and the Winshuttle workflow product. It is a free. You can find it on our CPS website, and you can also find it on our YouTube channel. If you do have any suggested web tips, I haven't received an email yet, but if you do have any suggestions on web tips, what are you currently doing? What are you currently doing? How are you doing it? Then you know, go ahead and email webtips@clearprocesssolutions.com, and you can actually we'll take that into consideration for our next web tips, whether it's a form or workflow, or it's a form or workflow tip or trick that you want us to show you, or if it's a desktop product. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the man in the cape here, Scott Swan. He's our Solution Care Manager here at Clear Process Solutions. He's the one answering a lot of the help desk tickets, and so, you know, he has a vast majority of experience across a lot of different technologies. He's a Winshuttle architect. He's a SharePoint architect. He's done a lot of workflow integration, some SQL integration. knows how to get into the code and actually write PowerShell scripts or some web service integration. So Scott's got a lot of experience with the Winshuttle toolset and also making other systems interact together. So with Scott, we've asked him to present this month because we thought that a lot of customers are actually, he's seeing a lot of questions coming in on performance around the Winshuttle product. So, what better person to present this topic than Scott? So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and make Scott the presenter, and he can get into our web tips for the month. Scott, if you want to say hi, and you are now the
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, based on where you're at. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that eventually.
All right, I see it, and I will...
All right. Justin, are you hearing me okay?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Okay, good. All righty, so as Justin introduced myself, we have, over the past many months, I've come across this performance question, performance issues with some of our clients. And I thought it would be good to kind of go over what Winshuttle has available to kind of help performance over time. This won't be a topic on servers and RAM and hard drive space and those things. This is going to be more on the line of how can I control some of the performance degradation over time that Winshuttle workflow will just have. So as you can see right over here, maintaining optimal performance, there's a few different areas that Winshuttle's provided where we can archive completed processes. We can archive obsolete solutions, and we can also purge a lot of the background jobs again away, and I'll describe what those are as we go through those. And then we have an added bonus, a fourth entry there for the SQL table SVService that we can actually improve performance on too, so that we've learned about and done at some clients. So that's an added bonus at no additional cost. So let's go ahead and go to my change slide. There we go. Archiving completed processes. So, the question always is, why archive? What am I doing this for? Well, as you submit processes and start processes, those entries go into SharePoint lists. Those go in the database. And the more processes you start, the more entries you're going to get on the SharePoint list, more entries you're going to get on the database. And so that's going to affect performance over time. In fact, SharePoint lists, as they grow, they tend to underperform as they get into the thousands of entries. And so, in fact, SharePoint has some thresholds in that too that are default, so that they can actually impact that also. And so, why archive? We want to get rid of some of that. We want to get rid of some of the items in the SharePoint production list. We want to get rid of those items in the database that are already completed. If I can view them somewhere else, I don't need them in the database to actually have to go through. So, we'll see hundreds of thousands of process records into the millions that you can actually get a hold of there too. So completed processes always need to be accessible. I kind of wrote that there as, I always want to access the data somehow, right? But I don't necessarily have to have them in the production SharePoint list or in the database. I can access them on an archive site possibly. And that is one of the things that we'll do when we archive is we'll move a lot of this data over to an archive site so that you can still look at it, view it, get any important information for audit or anything else. So. And of course, one of the other problems with performance is the workflow has to search through this database while processing workflows, right? So it's got to go through these millions of records or hundreds of thousands of records. The less data in the database, the better the performance. And of course, I already mentioned the SharePoint list items there. So we'll talk about the archiving there, and there's really 3 steps to the archive process. First of all, you have to configure archive in Winshuttle workflow, and I'll kind of show you that. I won't go through every single step, but I'll kind of show you what we did to turn it on. And then you can actually schedule process data to be purged out of the database, and then you can also move the data to a SharePoint site. So that's what we'll go through here. So on to the demo here. So we're going to configure archiving. That'll be our first entry right here. So let me go ahead and switch to my virtual environment here. And this is where we start here. We start in Winshuttle Workflow Central Admin. That is the web application that Winshuttle Workflow comes with. And this is version 10.9.1 from 10.8 on up. This actually was added to the product. And so there are other ways to do this in a command line, but I'll show you in the visual environment here. So to enable archiving, the first thing we had to do is we had to go to Configure Options. And we had to go to we had to add this name here, this thing called Workflow Process Auto Copy Enable. Very wordy. They could have come up with something like a WPA CE or something. That would have been a little bit easier. So we have to actually set that to true. So we'll actually have to go in here and add this and set it to true. That is the first step in the process. And of course, obviously with Solution Care, if you're a Solution Care customer, we can certainly help you with any of these configurations along the way. So we're glad to do it. So we had to set this to true. Once this is set to true, all kinds of things start happening in Winshuttle Workflow just because of that. So once we add this true property, the processing, which happens behind the scenes in the workflow product, there's a process called SVService that runs on your server. Many of y'all will probably know it's there, not sure what it all does, but SVService actually does all the assignments and the emailing and the PowerShell running and the plugin running. And it also does the archiving and purging and all these other things along the way. So it's scheduled. But once you enable this to true, I will show you what happens. You get a lot of things going on. One thing that'll happen on all your sites is all your lists will now start getting these fields called Is Offline History Ready and Winshuttle Archived History. There will be two fields that are added to every single workflow list that you have, and you'll see here is Offline History Ready and Winshuttle Archived History. So that's the first thing that happens, is it enables that. And then the process, the SVService process, goes back into every one of your processes all the way through back in time. If you had stuff running 3 years ago, it's going to go back into there. Even in the old ShareViz days and the designer solutions, it's going to go back and look at these and add these properties. And for any one of them that's completed, it's actually going to set your history ready to true, or yes. And also it's going to record the Winshuttle archived history. So this is the actual history of the product, of this workflow, and all the items and all the things. So every task, this could be a lot bigger than the one I'm looking at here. It's a pretty simple one, but for every task, the process, when it was started, when it completed, all these things are actually done. So you'll get that to happen. So one warning here, when you enable that archiving feature in the configuration options, the next time SVService runs, it'll take a little while because it's going to go back through your processes. So if you have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of processes running or completed, it's going to kind of run through all that. I've seen that take some hours at times for that first run. So when you do enable that, you want to enable that at a time where you're not too worried about getting processes going through the system. You may want to do it in an after hours or right before you leave or something like that, or over a weekend, so that it can actually process all this, set all these properties, configure all the data along the way. So now, that's what will happen. It'll copy all this data and it'll set this ready to go. So it's already really archived in a sense. It's already has Winshuttle history data in the list. So now you don't really need the database anymore for that type of information. So you have all the data and you have all your history right here. All right. So the second thing that happens here, what you want to do is, after that's already accomplished and completed, and that'll continuously run. So every time you have new processes that go to complete, it'll automatically configure them to yes if it's ready to be archived, and put the archived history in. So it continuously runs every time the SVService runs. If there's nothing to configure for archive for the next run, it'll just skip that. The next thing that happens in Winshuttle Workflow Central is what you want to do is now you have the next step, which would be to purge your process data, right? So now we want to go ahead and start removing the data out of the database and purging that out of the system. So because now you have a history of it, all the completed ones are actually already configured to store the history of the process, and the actual list item data is right there on the list itself. You don't have to worry about losing anything out of the database when you do this. So next thing you want to do is go to the scheduler. This is a new addition to the central admin from after 10.8. So inside scheduler, you'll actually see, a history of the jobs that have been run over time. You see I've run some here in testing and also done some stuff on my virtual to do that. And then you have up in the top right, you have your navigation to actually determine what you want to do. What is your desire right now? Well, we wanted to purge some process data, right? So we want to go ahead and go to purge process data here. And this is where you actually can choose the site that you want to purge from, right? So you can pick, I've got a demo site here that I was going to use, and then you can say all the list in there, or you can pick a certain list too. So you can actually do these individually if you want, or in bulk across the whole site. I'll go ahead and leave it on. Let's see, let's go ahead and do just that one alone there. So now here's your archive scheduling. You can do it now and just run it once, or you can schedule it to run at a certain time, which is kind of nice. So this could be, every month I want it to do something, right? I want it to start purging. So it could be on the 30th day of the month, the first day of the month. Let's go first day of the month right now. And then you can pick your time that you want this to run. So you can run it early in the morning so it doesn't affect a lot of people, or, evening, or anytime during the day. And of course, you can run it now to test it too. I'll probably go ahead and set it back to this. Purge data older than something, right? 0 is going to purge all completed processes. Now, this is only for completed processes. This is not going to purge any data of current running processes, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can say something like 30 days out. If I wanted 30 days out, and so keep everything newer than 30 days in here and keep the completed processes for whatever, and then just do 30 days out, or you can do 0 and it's going to do them all. And you do have a choice also to actually type in your email address. So if you have the access to Winshuttle Workflow Central Admin and you want to configure maybe you and somebody else to get an email saying that this process has been scheduled and has completed, then this is where you would actually type in your email address. And what will happen when I click Save here is it's going to actually schedule it to run now. It'll be the next time the SVService runs, and it will actually purge all data that's completed out of the database, which is really good. That's really what I want right now. So I will go ahead and hit Save, and you'll see that this has been scheduled, but it hasn't executed yet. I do like the scheduler view really well because it'll tell you if it's actually run or not and when it will run. So the next time SVService executes, it's actually going to do that. So that now I've successfully scheduled a purge process data for that one list. If I wanted to go ahead and schedule another one, click on Purge Process Data, pick another site, or the same site, maybe the other list, or pick all this time maybe. And now I'm actually purging the whole site. So very good process there. So that's going to clear out the database. That's going to keep the database as healthy as it can be and as low as possible, because obviously you're going to have a lot of completed items. That's going to be your majority, right, of data inside the database. It's going to be completed items over time. So you may want to schedule this once every month to just kind of get it, and then you could go 30 days out or 60 days out too, however you like to do. So I'll leave that for your discretion there. So, and once it runs, you'll get this entry here. You'll get a success or a canceled or a failed, and it'll tell you what it did too. So along the way, so very good. Okay, so next step in the archive process is now that I purged it out of the database. Okay, it's still in my SharePoint list, and There are a lot of them. There's 5,000 of them. There's 10,000 of these. The list is really slow. People are having trouble reading it because they can't see all of it because of the threshold. There's a lot of reasons why you want to go ahead and move this data somewhere else. So that's the next process here. So that's actually going to be under the moved archive data, okay? So right here, we're going to have a move archive data. Now, before you want to do this, you want to do some setup here. So this is my site that's running processes, right? So I have a site, whatever this is, that's running some processes along the way, and and they're taking up space and the lists are getting big. What I want to do is create an archive site. You can create an archive list in the same site, but I'd also recommend maybe just creating an archive site. So you go to one area for this, and then you'll have all your lists here that you can actually look at. And you can also create multiple archive lists for a specific process. So you may want to create a fiscal year one that you keep putting it in until the end of the year, and the next year you may want to transition to the next list, right? So right now I've got a demo site for archive, and so I've created that. And what I will do is I went in and created some lists in here. Standard SharePoint, I want to add a custom list right here and just name the list. So I kind of just set it up so it would take on each list individually. So, for instance, that I have a process for approvals, that I had, and so I want to put these approvals in this archive process. I also had a vacation or time off request. Let me go ahead and create that one too, so you can see me do this real fast. All right. Okay, so I just want to create that. That was, I already had that after all. Sorry. Okay, so that's okay. Okay, so what we want to do, there it is there. I just didn't see it. That was my fault. So what we want to do is create these lists so that now I can actually copy these or archive these production lists into this form. So got that all created, got it configured. I don't have to worry about putting all the columns in here, by the way, because the archive process will do that for me, and I'll show you that setup here. So going back to Central Admin, I'm in the Move Archive Data process, and I want to pick a source site. I want to pick where I'm coming from. That's my source. It's that demo site. I want to pick a source list that I want to archive. And so let's go ahead and do time off requests here. Very similar criteria. Let me grab a drink. Very similar criteria here. You want date older than, or a certain ID, or a date range. So maybe what I want to do, here 0 is going to be everything, right? So I may want to go ahead and archive everything. And if we actually look at that, this is on my production site here. I have 4 requests that are already completed, it looks like. So I want to archive everything. I don't want to go back in date range here. And here's your choice here. If checked, all source columns missing on destination list will be created automatically. So it's going to create stuff like requester, start date, end date. Obviously for your process, 20, 30 fields probably. So it's going to create those for you, which is nice. And here's where I can actually schedule this also, right? So exact same view here as first day of month, the 30th, and of each month, whatever we want to do here, right? And I may want to go back a certain amount of time here and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a now right now. So I'm just going to do that. Your same interface here for emailing. So if I want to be emailed when this process runs, I want to do that. And then I want the destination. I'm going to pick the destination. That's the same SharePoint site, a web app. I want to pick a new site, and this is my demo archive, right? So this actually will point it to that archive site, which is right over here, right? And so time off, there's nothing here right now, right? So, and then I'm going to pick the list to send it to. So I'm going to go ahead and do an archive time off right here. I want the time off request to be archived right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and that should do it. Just double checking on the way. So that's going to create a schedule for that. by the way, the purge process ran, as you noticed. So now the move archive data is going to run and execute, and that's actually going to copy over all those records. Let me just do a check here on my process, see if it's running. It's not. So let me go ahead and execute this. This is the ShareViz SVService process that runs on your servers, usually every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you've configured. If it's CPS doing that, we've configured it normally for 5-minute runs. So I'm going to kick that up, so it's going to execute that. So the goal here is to take these that are completed and move them to here so that this list now is small and can operate much faster. And if somebody needs to go get the archive, they know exactly where to go to get that. Now, over time, I would probably create an archive time off 2016, 2017, and build those lists and then change the schedule and where it's going to over the course of time so that I can actually find these a little easier instead of putting everything into one list. But that's a good best practice to do there. All right, so we just finished up the move archive data. So that's the 3 steps to really perform full archive in Winshuttle workflow. First of all, we configured it by going to the options and just turning it on. Then it runs itself and actually starts to populate those new fields in our list, and it puts the archive history in there, and you can actually view it that way. And then we actually started setting up processes to purge the data over time and also move archive data. So now we're getting rid of it out of the database, and we're actually cleaning up our production list too. And still we have audit ability where we can actually go in and see the process, who was assigned, who finished it, who was reassigned. All those things will be in the history of that. So don't know how long that will take. It's probably still running, so it does take a little bit to run. So actually, I do have one already here that actually pulled it over. So this is the one I ran last night, and you notice here it pulled over the history. I don't think this one had any extra fields in it, so you don't see any extra fields, I don't think, on this one. But it actually pulled over the history, and now I can actually click. There's also one other feature, which is installing. There's a separate control called the Winshuttle History Viewer. And when you click on this, when you've installed it in the SharePoint and you've activated that feature, here's our historical view. It looks very similar to the production one where it reads out of the database. This one here is reading out of that field and actually can show you all the different things that are going on there. So very nice. And so I can get to all my data. I don't lose it. I haven't lost it. It's in a nice archive spot. This is where auditors can come and just take a look at everything that they need to do. So and look at the history. All right, let me just go ahead and check one more time to see. Look at what we got here. We've got list items in here, time off requests, and you'll notice these fields are created. They weren't there before, so I can add them to my view like I would normally want to. So we had requester, start and end date, I think, was a couple others. And let's just go ahead and put the history in there too. Still, take a look at it. So there it is right there. So it's actually pulled over all that information. And again, I can actually go ahead and view the archived history of this item and see, trace back through all the scenarios that happened there. So very good. And this, again, is cleaning up the database and the production SharePoint list that tends to get large very fast. I've seen 20,000 and 30,000 rows in these things at times in the SharePoint list, which makes it really slow. And also the web parts have to look through that too. So all these task lists and process lists have to look through that. So it makes it quite difficult at times and definitely will slow down the process. All right, let's head on back to our PowerPoint here and see where we're at. So we've talked about archiving completed processes. We've looked at all 3 stages of that. So let's move on to our next thing. This is something we've found out over the past few months too, working with some clients, that this is another thing that can get built up very fast, is your obsoleted solutions. So what's an obsoleted solution? A solution that's not currently running, right? And also is not the current version of the solution. So if you have a solution deployed and you make a change to it, and nobody uses it, and then you make another change to it and deploy again, that first one now is obsoleted. It's not deleted from the database, it's still in there. And so that can actually build up over time. In fact, if you do use, if you do use your production environment as a test environment too, which some of our clients do, every time you make a deployment change, you're actually adding a new record. We've seen clients with 7,000, 8,000, 4,000 obsoleted solutions still sitting in the database. They're not used and won't be used. And so that can actually hinder performance on deploying a whole lot. We've actually seen deployment can time out because of this. Every time you deploy a solution,
They were having a hard time hearing you.
How about now? Can everybody hear me okay now?
You're back.
Okay, sorry. I think the wire moved. Never move a wire. Sorry about that. So every time you deploy a solution, you're going to get a new version. And if you have a current running process, then it's not going to be obsoleted yet until it no longer is running and has been completed or canceled or something. So only obsoleted solutions are the ones we're trying to archive out here, right? And so Winshuttle has devised a solution for that too. And so we'll go back to my virtual here and go back to our, central admin. And this one's not as much configuration because really you can do this anytime. We'll go back to the scheduler. And up here on the top right, you're going to have Archive Obsolete Workflow Solutions. So when you click on this, you're going to have some choices here. And this one has a setup just like the move archive data from a SharePoint list. You want to have a library already created for yourself, right? So I'm going to go back to my archive site, and I have created a library called something. Let's see, Archive Solutions right here. It's a document library. It's not a custom list now. So when you go to add an app, you want to add a document library here. And what this will do is now this thing's called Archive Solutions. I'm going to be able to archive solutions into this. So I can pick our source site again, which would be demo, right? I want to take some of these archive ones where I published and they're not used. I want to get them out of the system along the way. So, and again, I can schedule it or do it now, and I can put an email address. So same process here, very consistent. And here I want to pick the site I want to send these solutions to. So it's going to be demo archive. And I'm going to send it to the archive solution. So you're going to see a list of document libraries here you have available, and hopefully you've created one. And when you create it, you can actually do that there. So that's going to actually send any obsolete workflow solutions out of here into here, and it also removes them from the database, right? So now I don't have 7,000 obsoleted solutions in my database that when I go and publish, it has to look through them all, by the way, because it has to actually determine what's the next version, right? And so it's looking through these, according to Winshuttle documentation, it's going through all these 7,000 obsoleted along with current ones that may be running, and actually determining what to do next on the entry, inserting a new solution and what version it is, and then going ahead and publishing. So huge timeout issue can be resolved by doing this, and a huge timeout impact if you have a lot of these along the way. So, and then all I'm going to do is hit save, and that's going to schedule that. So again, I would say, again, routine scenario here might be is to schedule this once a month just to get rid of some obsolete ones, right, along the way. Or maybe just running this on occasion every now and then, maybe 6 months or a year out, whatever you want to do, but definitely plan for removing some of the obsolete solutions. But especially, and you may have a lot of these, especially if you use the production SharePoint server as a test bed also, because you can get a lot of these. I know we deploy, when I'm developing a solution, I may publish in one day 40 to 80 times. So I've just created 80 obsolete solutions immediately right there. Just in one day, I could have done that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and that's going to schedule that too. Okay. It's not going to delete your current solution, so no fear there. One place you can actually check your obsolete solutions too, this is just a nice little tip. If you're on the Winshuttle Central Admin, database usage status, look at what I've got here. This is in the whole database. I've got 1,086 obsolete workflow solutions. So I have quite a few already just in my virtual environment from publishing so much. So, and there is a little link here to go to the scheduler for the archive obsolete solutions here. And let me show you the table that this is in, because this table can get very large very fast. WF-PROCDEF is the table that stores every one of your published solutions. So right here, I've got 2.4 gig of just this, and that's small, by the way. I've seen clients at 9, 10 gig, stuff like that, 14 gig. So these can get large really fast because of how many solutions, how large they are, and also, you know, we're publishing 80, 90 a day at times when we're testing, not realizing the impact we're actually making on the database there. So definitely archiving will actually help that a lot. Okay, so very good. Also, we'll show you the other table here too in a little bit. So that's archiving obsolete solutions there. Very important. One thing that is easily overlooked along the way, and I think most clients don't even know this exists. So along the way, because it's hard to find any documentation from Winshuttle, so that means nobody's asked. Alrighty, so that's a good way to do that. Now, there's one other thing that can actually hinder performance a lot, and that's related to the SVService process. That was that process I showed y'all in the task schedule that everybody has on their server. If you don't think you have it, you do, because it has to run. And it's called SVService.exe, and we tend to title it like Winshuttle Service, but it actually runs every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, however you've configured it. And so it actually runs from a table. And so what it does is the workflow engine will insert records into this background jobs table called SVService every time it needs to do anything. So when I submit a workflow, when I submit a process or start it, there are many, many records added to that background job. So every notification is added. Every plugin run is added. Every assignment email is added. Every assignment process, every archive process, every purge data process, no matter what the entry is actually it's being inserted in this table. So a normal workflow may have 40 to 50 to 60 entries into this easily because there's so many things going on, so many tasks. For every task that's going to have an assignment, there's going to be a record added, at least one record, if not many records added to this background jobs table. And the background jobs table doesn't really hold any valuable data for your process. It's just something that has to run at the time. Hey, I need to send an email to Justin, you know, to tell him he's assigned a record. So that's what we've got there. So, and why purge those? Because they grow really fast. I've seen millions of records in here. So, and they're completed. So if they're completed, there is no need to have these in the database anymore. And SVService has to go through all those again, don't forget. So now it has to query 2 million records because it's trying to find one record to do like a plugin or something like that. So it's got to go through 2 million records to actually go find it. And so that can actually cause a lot of performance issues. So it can grow substantially, as I was saying here, based on how many running processes you have and how many tasks in those processes. Completed jobs make up the majority of these records too. And of course, completed jobs are not even necessary anymore because they're already done. And there's really no need to do any of that. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. The SVService process runs out of that table and it performs all those job actions. So first thing you can do to look at your background jobs is right here. It's called Manage Background Jobs, and you'll see 1 week I've got tons in here, right, for myself. So everything that happened, whether it was the obsolete solution executor to move an archive, right, sending an email, an assignment email, anything that's going on is going to be entered into this system and run along the way. So let me go back here. And so to purge those background jobs, and we want to purge completed, by the way. That's the real one. Those are the large sums. I've seen in most of the clients' databases, I see usually about 85 to 90% of the records are completed easily. So it could be even high as 95. So not many of them are waiting to be run. Most of them are already completed, and that's where you can gain a lot of performance increase here by just shrinking that size of the table down. So in the scheduler, we'll go back to scheduler again because that's the same place we're going to do. We're going to schedule a purge of background jobs now. So when we click on this here, we're going to get a similar interface, but it's a little, it has some other choices here. What kind of status do I want to purge out of the background jobs? The complete ones. I don't want to get rid of pending because pending is getting ready to run. And again, you still have the same scheduler, or you can do a now. And this is how, do you want to purge all records or with some kind of selected criteria in minutes, right? So I want to purge everything maybe completed that's greater than, 2 hours, so I could just put in the minutes for that 120 or something like that, right? And then here's your email again too, like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say just get rid of all completed items. Here you don't pick a site or a list, by the way, because all the background jobs are all together. So all you're doing is picking what type and when do you want to do it and what type of duration do I want to look back at. And then I want to go ahead and hit save. Oh, I didn't really type -1, did I? That was my fault. All right. So, and of course, here's your schedule again. It's going to execute when SVService runs again. So that's going to remove all the completed background jobs from the database. And that will be a whole lot. And let's go back to our database usage status, which is really a nice view here, by the way. And we're going to look for the SVService table here. It's right here. It doesn't tend to get too large, but it'll hold a lot of records. Okay, so because the data is not as large as the solution WF proc one, but it can get really large. Again, I've seen millions of rows in here if they've never archived or purged them. So, all right, so that is purging, and then we have one more bonus tip here. And this, again, is something I would schedule routinely. Once a month, getting rid of all the completed is great, so that you can kind of keep that database clean. So SVService doesn't take a long time. Because what happens is we'll see SVService run. If they schedule it every 5 minutes, we see a lot of clients that are having some performance issues. The SVService will run for 20 minutes. Well, if you schedule it for every 5, then you're missing a lot of runs here. So we don't want that. And that actually gets us to the last little point I was going to show, which is this is a extra special tip here that we've learned. The SVService table, that's in the SQL Server, right there, does not have a primary key on it as we speak right now. And that, of course, if you're a DBA and hearing that, you're going, well, that's not very good. Because, yeah, that actually hurts performance. So another way to improve the SVService.exe process from running is to go ahead and configure that ID to be a primary key. I circled that. Obviously, most of us don't have access to the SQL Server directly. We have a DBA. Obviously, our solution care, we would love to help you with that too. We'd be glad to just assist the DBA or anybody we need to with that, with solution care. So, but what that does is it'll set up a primary key, which will cause the database to index properly, and actually it'll be able to find records a lot quicker. On most of our clients, and I'm not sure if I've seen one that did not have a success rate of at least cutting the process down in half. So whatever it ran in, if it runs in 20 minutes, it cut it down to 10 easily from that. If it runs in 10, it's cutting it down to 5. If it runs in 5, it cuts it about 2.5. Yeah, so that's actually a great little tip there along the way. So, and I think that ends our discussion, I think. Am I on time, Justin?
You are on time. I do have one came across that I'll let you answer. The question came,
sure.
Says, if you have a SharePoint column and attachments, will they be moved to the archive list as well?
Very good question. Let me see if I can show that too. Let's go here and let's see, which one did I archive recently? All right, this one right here, right? They should be moved. There's the answer. And they are. So you know, and I missed one little key feature that I forgot to tell you all about too. So when you enable archiving, one other thing happens in your production lists too, by the way. They're not there no more, so let me look on this one here. They're not one other thing that happens is it actually creates a MHT file for this form. So now you have a printable form, by the way, you can actually click on and open up, by the way. I forgot to show you all that. Y'all have probably seen this as attachments, right? You can actually, in your email approvals and things like that, so it'll actually do that. So one thing the archive also does is create an MHT file, and you notice it actually moved it afterwards. So this archive timeout list item had that very attachment in there. If it had more, you would see more in here. So if I had 15 attachments on this request in production, it would have been moved with it. So you have all your attachments, you have a copy of the form, and then you have all the history. So you're really not missing anything. That was a great question, by the way, too. Hopefully that answer is good.
Yep, I think so, Scott. All right. So thank you, Scott, for presenting here today. I looked over, see if there was any more questions. It looks like that was our last question. So I'm going to go ahead and give our last little bit on our upcoming events for here at CPS. So we have our Lean Utopia sessions and hug coming up. So if you haven't registered, you can go to clearprocesssolutions.com and click on our events page. On August 25th from 1 to 4, we're going to be hosted by Applied Industries, and that'll be a great event in Cleveland here. And it will we do have an after party scheduled at the Rust Belt. So when you come to the event, you can come and learn some new tips and tricks from some of your fellow Winshuttle users, as well as discuss kind of with the CPS team and other users as a networking event afterwards, so we can have more room for discussion. And then September 15th, we have our next WEBtips coming up. That's going to be for the desktop tools. So if you're a transaction, query, and direct user and you want to learn some new tips and tricks, that session will be on the 15th. And then November 17th, we do have another Winshuttle Hero user group being hosted by Kichler Lighting. And Kichler has a lot of processes that they've been automating over the years. So they have a great background on automating a lot of business processes, and most of their processes are actually outside of their core ERP system. So it's actually fantastic to see some of the use cases they have. They also, Rick Hawk from Kichler Lighting is going to be at our after-event party on the 25th to show off some of the dashboards that Kichler has. They implemented our Process BI tool, and so they are able to see some of the metrics around how long processes are taking, who's assigned a process, what's holding up, what's the bottleneck. So Rick's actually volunteered to show some of the people that are coming to the after party some of the cool dashboards that he's been enabled. So again, just go to our events page at clearprocesssolutions.com, and you can register for any one of these events. Thank you, Scott, for presenting today, and thank you for everyone for attending, and we'll make sure we post this on our YouTube channel.